Merry Christmas and Happy New Year!
Welcome to this month's Salute to Service, and with me today I have United States Marine Corps veteran Steve Shields. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Steve is a native of Medina County, right?
I am.
Tell me a little bit about where you're from.
I was born and raised right in the Wadsworth, Seville area. So lived there, went to Wadsworth High School.
Oh, wow.
Through most of my life, and then kind of moved to Cloverleaf in the Medina Career Center to kind of graduate.
Okay.
And then
So when did you graduate from high school?
2004.
2004. Wow, you're a young guy. So when you graduated from high school, did you go right into the Marine Corps? Or?
I did. I did the program for the summer, and then kind of left in August. So
why did you join the Marine Corps?
Well, to be honest, I was actually had an appointment with a Navy recruiter.
Okay.
And I was the old recruiting station, Medina. You had to go in and pass the Marine Corps recruiting station.
All right.
And so the Marine Corps recruiter kind of called me out and asked me why I wasn't going to join the Marines. And so
let me guess, you had that nice uniform on and everything too, right?
Yep. And he kind of challenged me, asked me if I couldn't handle the Marine Corps, and so that became my appointment there, and
wow,
just seemed to fit with kind of my mindset. And
so what motivated you to join the service though as a young man?
So I was in high school during 9/11, and always had like a sense of wanting to protect and serve, and just being part of being a young man when that happened, and being part of the community and the country, and it felt like the greatest opportunity to give back and kind of be a part of something bigger than myself.
Right. So when you joined 2004, right?
Correct.
So where'd you go to basic at?
So we had Parris Island.
Okay.
So I did that with the Marine Corps, and then following up through combat training.
Was basic as tough as you thought it would be?
It's very, going into it, I thought it was really going to be more physical toughness, which it is. It's demanding, but it's really, I think, just the emotional state of committing to something and being able to follow through the process.
Right. Can you put up with it, more or less? I mean, it's kind of a head game.
It is.
In other words, yeah. But it's not, I guess, and I tell, because the young folks that come to me and they want to join the service, I said, think of the hundreds of thousands of people that did it. So it's not impossible, but they are trying to weed out those ones that, can't cut the mustard, I guess you'd say.
And I think as a young guy or woman, getting the structure in your life at that age is, for a couple months is only leads to a real positive impact.
Right. So when you got out of basic, what's one of your fondest memories of, or maybe not your fondest, but what's one of your most, memories of basic training and your AIT after that?
So for me, coming out of boot camp, like a couple people from the whole platoon will get a meritorious promotion for something. So that was like my first recognition in the military.
Oh, wow.
I really wasn't gifted in anything special, but just kind of had a lot of heart and just kind of fought through a lot and trying to motivate others and being an inspiration to other people.
You got promoted coming out of basic then.
So kind of last day of boot camp, they said, they let me know they were going to be a meritorious promotion.
Wow, that's a big
based
deal.
on that spirit. So that was probably something I was most proud of.
Cool. So what was your job in the Marine Corps?
I started with aviation countermeasures.
Okay.
So our responsibility was to make sure that the aircraft securing patrols and whatnot had the proper equipment for any like heat-seeking missiles or attack that we can.
That's like the flash grenades that come out and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
Chaff,
it tracks
flare.
the missile tracks the grenade or whatever instead of the aircraft.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. And then so did you do that, or because you said when you first went in that's what did you change over to do?
So at some point, about halfway through my career, that job actually started going to more of a digital role.
Okay.
So I kind of took this old analog role and then combine some other things without moving. So I did combat marksmanship instructor,
Okay.
Working with on the pistol range, rifle range, and helping with weapons and instruction.
Okay. So when you got out of AIT, where'd you go? Where was your duty station, or where were you assigned to?
So I ended up back recruiting a lot in Medina because
all right.
I was supposed to go to Pensacola,
Okay.
and that was during the few years of hurricane after hurricane.
Okay.
So I think about the first year I'd get down there for a couple of weeks and a storm would hit, and I ended up doing 3 or 4 months that first year doing recruiting duty.
Send you back home.
Yeah, and then eventually after that year we got training done, and so it was about a year in Pensacola.
Okay. And then, so were you assigned to Pensacola, or did you ever go to one of the, what do they call them, the MEUs? I'm not familiar with the Marine Corps a whole lot, but it's a MEU on the East Coast and a MEU on the West Coast. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I ended up with Camp Lejeune
Okay, all right.
as kind of my duty station.
Right.
So went there as soon as I graduated in Pensacola.
So Cherry Point, were you out on Cherry Point a lot or anything?
Actually, Cherry Point is one of the naval
Okay.
aviation bases, but they have the air station New River is like kind of part of Lejeune. So
Okay. So how long were you there? Was that the rest of your assignment for the next 3 years, or?
So my permanent duty station, yes, but during that time I also deployed
Where'd you deploy to?
Iraq and Afghanistan.
So when did you go to Iraq?
2008.
With an aviation unit?
Correct.
Okay.
So one of the exciting things that I like was the last unit for the CH-46s, the helicopters
Okay,
in the front and back,
yeah.
but also the first unit with the Osprey,
Okay.
which is the helicopter that
Right.
flies like that.
The tilt rotors goes either way?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So the 46 is like the Army's 47, just a little bit smaller to
Correct.
fit on the aircraft, or fit on the ships, more or
Yep,
less, right?
same
Yeah.
exact thing.
So what's it like, you were, 19, 20 years old at that point, and you're told you're going to Iraq. What's going through your head? Were you married, still single?
I was single,
Single, okay.
young guy, trying to figure out life, and honestly, a lot of us were kind of waiting for that call.
Yeah.
We signed up during 9/11, like for that kind of with that intention and that
Right.
purpose. So it was kind of, all right, this is what I've been training for, emotionally and physically preparing for. So it was our time, our call.
Yeah, it's kind of the test.
Right.
Yeah. So how long were you in Iraq?
I was in Iraq from most of like the beginning of 2008 to the end of 2008.
So almost a whole year.
Yeah, something like
Where were you at?
that. So Kandahar, or actually
That's Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yep. So Al-Assad,
Okay.
and was the primary base, and then I operated out of a forward operating base called Al-Taqaddum.
So what did you, working 46s, what did you do over there? What was your job?
I was a collateral duty inspector, so I was signing off on the aviation electronics of the aircraft, making sure everything was good to go for flight and safety.
It's almost like a crew chief, except for the electronics portion. Is that kind of
Correct.
Like maintenance? Okay.
And then with having like the security clearance, became a courier for classified information back and
Going
forth.
back and forth. A lot of flight time or a lot of flying over there? Or?
It was not as much in Iraq as Afghanistan. We're kind of more on the later end of Iraq.
Okay. So when you came back from Iraq in 2008, how long were you back home at Lejeune before you went to Afghanistan?
So I actually never made it home. My unit came home, and we flew back to the airport to kind of get our stuff and come back to the States. And they pulled me aside and said, Shields, the 24th MEU is approaching in Afghanistan right now, and I was the only collateral duty inspector that could sign off in the area. So my unit went home, and I went to Kandahar.
Wow. Got to love that. I got off the airplane coming from Iraq, and my sergeant major said, hey, you're going to go to Afghanistan in 3 months. That 3 months turned into 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
So I had a little more time than you did.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that it happens to other people too. So you're off to Afghanistan. You said you were down in Kandahar for a while too.
Yes.
So that's the primary flight area over there. So what did you think when you got off the plane? Or I don't know, I assume they told you when you got back. And how long were you here? A couple days or?
Never made it to the States.
Oh, you never made it. So they told you in Iraq. They just sent you from Iraq to Afghanistan.
Yeah, we were in Qatar. And
Okay.
so kind of doing the shuffle, and I ended up getting on another plane going the other direction.
So how long were you in Afghanistan?
That a couple months.
Yeah.
We were setting up because we were doing the initial approach in and getting the unit set up for the Marine Corps because we did not have an establishment there on the backside of Kandahar at the time. So once we got set up and processed, they brought more people in.
So doing the same thing in Afghanistan as you were in Iraq?
Correct. And try and get flight operations set up because we didn't have them there. So that was our most critical mission.
So when you say you didn't have them there, was that the Marine Corps or there wasn't?
Yeah, the Marine Corps. So
Okay.
there's a NATO base there that was been in operation since the Cold War.
Yeah.
That was very prominent in the area. So it was just our unit for what we were doing.
So I assume that the old airport was still there with the thing. So a little history of that airport. It was built by the Eisenhower administration. And I believe the guy that designed that airport, that building, the structure, the airport itself, was the same guy that designed Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C.
Oh, really?
So that's why it's got that same kind of architecture,
Okay.
Design. So kind of a strange thing. So I remember when I was there, all the fire plugs said San Francisco, California, because it was all built by Americans. So
That makes sense.
yeah. So what was the differences for you that you saw on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan? Any at all?
The differences between Iraq and Afghanistan?
I mean, your missions, or what you saw as far as the two countries or the people or, what was going on there.
For my experience, it was completely, let's say, different due to the fact that coming in on the tail end of operations in Iraq, we're kind of more of a stability unit of just keeping things status quo. So there wasn't a whole lot of high pressure initial activity, whereas in Afghanistan, the 24th MEU coming in was a large presence kind of re-establishing themselves from some operations several years prior.
Right.
So it was much more gritty, if you will.
High intensity kind of.
High intensity, daily airstrikes, getting things established and set up and the unknown.
Right.
So
did you get out in the country a lot?
A little bit, not a whole lot in Afghanistan, yeah.
But the two countries, would you say they're similar or totally different?
My experiences were very similar in that nature. And, the Middle East as a whole, the culture.
Right.
I thought there was a lot that was pretty much the same.
Yeah. I think when you get out into the smaller villages, they are a lot alike. What I noticed was the difference in Iraq was, when you got Baghdad is a city, and
Yes.
and even the cities in Afghanistan weren't really a city. Like Kandahar really wasn't what we would call a city. Yeah,
right.
It was kind of. So I thought it was still a little bit more desolate, I think, but interesting.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, interesting. So almost over a year and a half, it seemed like you were deployed then for the whole time.
Yeah.
Right? So what do you do when they tell you you're going home?
Well, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. I wanted to re-enlist or move on. That was probably the thing I thought about the most at that point. And I had loved everything with the military. I was really torn if I was going to be career or not. I had been going to college since the day I started, so I was getting really close to finishing my undergrad. So I was looking at going to an officer school if I re-enlisted. So coming back home, like preparing myself mentally was the stress of I guess somebody coming out of college. What is the next step to actually get my life together?
Right. So how long did you have left when you came back to Camp Lejeune to make that decision?
Less than a year.
Less than a year.
So I was I ended up extending 6 months past my 5-year contract.
Right.
To get everything finalized.
So when you came back and then you're deciding to leave, what's the hardest thing to leave when you leave the military?
Hands down, the friends.
People,
It's community. I mean, you never really gain that back, where you
Yeah.
have so many people you can count on and trust for
Yeah.
anything in your life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. Yeah, it is tough. Any memories from Iraq or Afghanistan that stand out that kind of changed you as who you are or made you the guy you are today?
I think the biggest thing is just acceptance of diversity and trying to see people's perspectives differently.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in Seville, small town of a couple thousand people, somewhat limited on a lot of different perspectives.
Right.
So now being in, the Middle East with multiple countries and multiple people, even from the United States.
Right.
We're living in a tent with even just the 70 guys are all different perspectives.
Right.
And during those moments, you really find out like what is most important to people, how do they react to situations, what is their life perspective, and
Right.
so you really bond with people that I don't know if you'd ever get a chance, and even the locals of the area.
Right.
So just a whole new appreciation of where people come from and how they think, and life as a whole unit, not just us as individuals.
Yeah. Gives you a whole new perspective on coming home, though, too, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think ultimately how that impacted my life the most is probably what got me here is coming back to a job. There was always a void that I could never get back of the meaning and the difference that we were making in people's lives.
Right.
Just the conversations you'd have with a local or another vet. Just every day you were making a difference.
So you decided to get out, obviously, and move forward. What was that turning point that said, I think I'm going to go back home? Children,
Family, and younger siblings back home that I had not really, I knew them, but I didn't know them because I'd been gone, because they're about 10 years younger than I. And so that was like the next step in my life, if trying to establish a family and children, I just didn't think that the fit of being gone so much was going to be a real benefit to be able to work off of that.
So you came back here, and obviously you've established yourself. You run a business here in Medina County, which is, go ahead.
I'm a financial advisor.
Okay.
So I kind of work with a lot of individuals and small businesses on retirement planning, personal debt, anything they can really do with investing.
And you're based out of Medina, in the city of Medina.
Correct.
And so what made you choose that path of financial planning, and what made you come back home to establish it here?
So to me, that's my call to service these days. So I had about 10 years in between that of going on to the corporate world,
Right.
Getting my college, my master's, got an MBA and a master's in finance. And that really gave me a great platform to succeed in a corporate setting. But it came back to that emptiness. When I was doing my master's, I worked with a few instructors that we really just talked about critical thinking and the meaning of life and affecting people. And I just didn't have that platform anymore.
Right.
So to me, I'm back to my community, and I maybe can't make a difference in the world on a large scale, but every day, I wake up hoping that in my community, whether it's a young person or somebody going into retirement,
Right.
How can I just make a little difference in their life? And people appreciate that a lot.
Well, so you said, one of the things about leaving the military is that fact that you do feel like you're doing something for the world, almost on a daily basis, especially with wars going on and being deployed. And you come back here, and I know you do a lot here in the community. You volunteer at the VFW, the Marine Corps League, and a couple other organizations too. How do you think those organizations impact the community as a whole that they support?
I think they define our community. If you look at the backbone of, we'll use Medina County, there is a large core group of people who are in a lot of the same organizations and are, anytime someone's in need, I don't know how many nonprofits we have here, but there's every day that I meet somebody and they need something, you can almost reach out to. There's already an organization or a group of people set up here in this community to help them and push them along, help them through tough times. Yeah. And I don't think there's a more rewarding feeling you can have than having a support system for somebody when they need it the most.
It is good to see somebody come out the other end doing better and knowing that you were a part of that. And I don't want to say it's a pat on the back or anything, but it is, it is a good feeling to go, hey, you've made it, and I was a part of that, as an individual. And I don't think most people realize Medina County is not only a great place to live, but it's a great place to be a veteran. And there is a lot of support around here for veterans, whether it is from a veterans organization or just one of the other organizations that help people. And it's not like that everywhere in the country. I mean, there's places that unfortunately look down upon us.
Right.
So there is a lot of key support there. So the Marine Corps League, I know you guys are, I don't know if you're involved in it. They're doing Toys for Tots again this year?
Correct.
Are you involved in that?
Yep.
With the helping? So tell me a little bit about Toys for Tots.
So Toys for Tots is, I think, an organization most probably familiar with in some degree or another. But so we got a building over by the old E-Check on Progress.
Okay.
Next to
by the water tower. Most people know where the water tower is. Okay. Yep.
So that's going to be the distribution point this year, and the boxes are going to be going out around Medina County, to collect toys. They come back to the distribution center, and I'd have to check with Bob for the exact numbers, but I think over like 1,000 to 1,500 families are kind of dependent or planning on using that for a source of providing toys for their children. So they get to come, several days before Christmas and pick those things up, and those are people who are extremely grateful for the opportunity. Right. Last winter, there was a family who was very close to me that got adopted by some veteran organizations, and really changed, I think, the season for a lot of kids. Right. And those are the opportunities that you get to make a difference in someone's lives. Right.
And I know we'll have a box in our office if you want to drop off toys. It's got to be new toys packaged up, right?
Correct.
Not wrapped, but still in the package, new toys. Feel free to drop them off in our office, and we'll have a box for Toys for Tots there, and there'll be other places around the community too. So what's your plans for the future? I mean, tell me what Steve's going to do in the future here, and how the military has put you on that path to whatever your goals are.
So my personal mission is to really become more of a liaison of supporting our community, and a couple different capacities I really like to operate in: our youth, troubled youth, the handicaps, and the veterans. Just because of my connections and resources, I have grown to really appreciate all that the veteran communities do in Medina County, and I think I was amongst many who didn't know about all the options the first 5 or 6 years I was home. But the support that I've got since then has changed my life. Right. I think back to maybe the first time I sat down with you in office to where I'm at now. My world is completely different, and a lot of people made a huge difference. So to me, it's continuously giving that back.
What do you think, and obviously you're one of the younger folks, what do you think that the veterans groups, whether it's here in Medina or anywhere, can do to attract younger guys and gals like yourself? I mean, because that's one of the key things. If I had the key to how to do that, I'd make $1 million because they're hurting for people. And what attracted you to those organizations, and that maybe you could pass on to your generation that they need you? These organizations need younger vets.
So I am probably in the same position as many of the veterans myself. We have young families, sports and school, and it's hard to make that extra time to do things.
Right.
But when I went through the process, and there were so many people helping me and supporting me, and so I started to try and give back and help a few individuals, and I noticed the need that prominently the Vietnam era of veterans are running a lot of these organizations, and it's becoming more and more difficult and getting support and volunteers. So really, I wanted to help them because I know what they've done for me, and they've set the foundation. Right. And I think it's our responsibility to start picking up kind of where they left off. And, young people with families, I would encourage them that maybe it's not a full-time commitment, but if we can get them involved, I'd like to do more with kids, more with families. Get, my children are, proud of the things. They weren't even born necessarily when I was going through those times, but being involved now, they get to see a different perspective of that.
Right.
So trying to get young families, young children, kind of to unite as one community. And I believe, I think a lot of times veterans don't ask for help. So being around to support, I think it helps guide people to get them help they may not even realize they need or is available. I think just having a stronger family tie.
I think that's key is, you said something there, and we don't like to ask for help. But I think we, amongst any other group, know when somebody else needs the help. I mean, I think we can look at another veteran and go, hey, bud, you need some help, and,
right.
And I don't know if there's any other group that really can do that, because we do know each other in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you meet a vet, you may not be friends or know, but you kind of got a connection.
Absolutely.
It always happens. And I don't care what generation you're from either. You can connect with a World War II guy. There is that bond that you served, and I don't think that'll ever go away. I always ask everybody, any last words before we sign off here that you want to tell our viewers about why you served and maybe why they should serve?
I really want to inspire young people to give the military a second look. And I bring that from multiple perspectives. One, as a daily financial advisor, I get to see my children, even other children, the expense of colleges and the success rate coming out of college compared to services and technicals schools. I used the military to give me structure in my life, and I got an undergraduate degree and some master's degree, which the military helped me support monetarily and with structure. And so I think there's sometimes a stigma there, or parents may not have given it the biggest opportunity to sit down with people who have become very successful with a military foundation. There's a lot of successful business owners, even here in town, in Medina County, that have a strong veteran background. And so I think it's a huge resource for a lot of different individuals. So especially 16, 17, 18, they start thinking about maybe they don't know exactly where they want to go to college, or there's reserve units. There's a lot of different options that I love people to explore a little bit more, just to see if it is a good fit for them. Right. Because it could be a great way to avoid the $100,000 mistake of a couple of years of college, to realize that may not be the best fit.
Well, and the people you're going to see too and meet that I don't think people realize until you actually get out into the world, it's going to change your view on home.
Absolutely.
I mean, you see home as one thing, but once you get out in the world, you come back and you see it as another thing, and whether that's good or bad or indifferent, but it will change your view of where you're from. I ask everybody this one last question. If you had to do it all over again, would you do it again?
110%. I owe my entire life to the Marine Corps. They've set me up for success, gave me the tools for everything I need, and I think that's where my passion is, to just continuously give that back, to create a platform to help others get on that same track that somebody else helped me get on, and hopefully it makes a difference for them, and maybe one of them will go on and change the world.
There you go. Steve, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And we'll see you next month on Salute to Service. Thank you.